Welcome. My name is Marco, and we're going to do a fantasy creature feature.
What are you drawing?
A liger.
What's a liger?
It's pretty much my favorite animal. It's like a lion and a tiger mixed. Bred for its skills and magic.
Let's make that up. Fantasy creature feature. It's kind of catchy. Or a fantasy creature gear review, but then it may sound a little bit. I think that's taken. I'm not sure. But this is from Chris. We're going to be looking at his creatures, his fantasy creatures, some of his lore, mostly his creatures, and we're going to look at his weapons and armor. And I'm not here to say what's wrong, what's right, but it was his request that he wanted my thoughts on that. And that's, as a writer, I know to be able to have some feedback is so refreshing, and that's writing is very lonely. It's a very hard thing, and it's nice to get feedback. And so I want to give encouragement and give them some thoughts, because it's really scary when you're writing. You don't. It's like, did I overlook anything? As soon as it's in the cover, then it's hard to change. Trust me, I know. I've had to do it. So I had to do it, and it was not. I wanted to quit right there. I made the changes and bit the bullet, and it was really depressing. Depressed for a long time. So, this is good. This is good. A good, healthy thing. And some of these drawings are a bit rough, but everything starts out rough. My drawings don't start out in full color. They start out a rough sketch, a bunch of stick figures. And so it starts out rough, and eventually it goes from this to this, so hopefully one day we all dream and hope that it'll become something epic like this. So again, these drawings, I had permission from Chris to present these, and my drawings are not meant to bring judgment. They're not to make, say mine are better, mine are right. They're just a projection, an idea of, something, because these sketches are rough, and it's really hard to present, raw sketches. It's really hard to talk about ideas. That's what I got into drawing, was like I wanted to share my passion. And the thing about writing is it's really hard to get somebody to sit down and say, do you want to read my 100-page manuscript? No. So drawing, well, in some ways, was more immediate satisfaction. I was able to present something. So that's part of my skill set, and I want to make sure that Chris is encouraged by these, that somebody else sees his vision. That's what I want. I don't want, so, if I just presented these, they're rough. Every idea starts rough. and we refine it from the idea, and we put it into a book. And in the process, it's a very lonely process, and it's, some people, they don't understand, and it's different, and yeah. Here we go. All right, let's do this. Let's go look at the Hydras first. Hydras are pretty cool, very fascinating, and first thing I see is the bident. And you might be wondering, what is a bident? It's like a trident, but with 2 prongs instead of 3. So, tricycle, 3 wheels, bicycle, 2 wheels. So, I want to give you a compliment here. The bident is short in comparison to the Dragonon, or the dragon. Right, and that is important because when you're swimming, if you want to maintain maneuverability, if it's really long, your turns are going to be really hard in deep water. And so that's I don't know if you did that on purpose, but if you did, that's well thought out. Well thought out. So, and this is next thing about the bident. This is not a critique. This is just an observation. The bident is barbed. It's great for, it's going to stick. Most barbed things are used for fishing. If you notice, most spears are not barbed, but there are some. And the reason why most spears are not barbed is so you can pull them out after and you can stick the next guy or stab the other guy. If he's still alive, you stab him again. The bident is a great multi-purpose weapon. You can use it for warfare, and you can probably use it for hunting, spearfishing. The cons are, with those barbs, it's going to stick into somebody. And you won't be able, it's going to be hard to get back out. You might be able to, but there's a high risk that it'll be stuck. So that's not really a con. It's a give or a take. Like, pro, the bident it's stuck. It's stick. It inflicts pain, more bleeding, and sometimes you'll lose it. So that's a trade-off. Which means they're probably going to need a secondary weapon. And if the Hydras are dealing with any other creature that's going to be a surface-dwelling creature, like the humans or the other dragons or draconian type species that they will encounter, then they're probably going to encounter nets. Nets are going to be, even if it's mistaking, like, because there'll be fishermen, and if they get entangled in nets, they have to get out of nets. That could just be a simple mistake, so they're going to need some sort of bladed weapon, preferably a knife. But, knives, that's a knife is, well, it's nice. A knife's more of a tool. So if I were to add a secondary weapon, I would probably give him a sword, something bladed, or something with a hook, where you could get somebody, like snatch somebody from a boat and pull them into the water. But a bladed, uh, a bladed weapon will help them in a in a in the event they're getting tangled, and rope and a net, and it's a great backup weapon. It's light, and it shouldn't drag them down too much. This particular sword I gave him is a Moral Chris. You can use whatever you want, but that's that's my thoughts on the Hydra. And wait, I forgot the most important thing. The Hydra, it lives in the water. So take this for what it's worth. In the ocean is very acidic. It will rust through iron and steel unless it's unless it's treated in some way. With the consistent Greek mythology theme, consider bronze. Bronze is very rust resistant. If not bronze, then possibly consider some way of treating their materials. I mean, yes, you can use magic. That's a possibility, magic. But their everyday life, everything is going to have some sort of, I mean, we don't have to get too far into reality because it is a mythical creature, a talking mythical creature, and I don't want to overanalyze it, but if you had a material that resisted deterioration, that might be interesting. That might be more immersive, and that's that's a fine line of writers and entertainers we have to make. Are we going for immersion or entertainment? And sometimes you can get away with it. Sometimes you can't. A lot of times you can. A lot of times you can. And so that's my thoughts on the Hydra. Okay. Let's look at the next one. All right, on to the next one. We're going to discuss the Dracodin Soldier. Very cool creature. Very big. Around 12 to 14 feet tall. Big. When you consider most... so this guy is... he doesn't even have to jump to make a basket. He just plop, if he's playing basketball, he just pick up the ball and plop it in the basket. Or in the hoop. Yeah. So this he's big. Now, most people say, what about the wing size? This is a rough scale. And I think it would look really cool if he had bigger wings. It would look a lot scarier. These guys are the top dogs. The conquerors, the invaders, the strong guys. If I've got the gist of things, if that's got the down low, these guys are big, they're strong, and they are conquerors. And so, what can I say? The armor was according to Chris, is inspired by the Greek type style armor. To be more specific, I think you mean more like a Spartan, which are a segment of Greek, but the Spartans were a lot. They favored war. If you say Greek armor, it can or a Greek style culture. The Greeks varied a lot. We go towards Spartan, which were also Greek. Then yeah, okay, I can see that. Now, when we consider flying, we want to be aerodynamic. We want to be lightweight. Um, but it's fantasy. This is a story, and these guys can pick up just about anything and crush normal humans with it. And so the spear's cool. It's a bit heavy though, but again, there's the balance. Where's the balance between entertainment and reality? We're talking about 14-foot talking lizards. Let's not overthink it too much. Let's go on to the next one. Believe it or not, the biggest issue I have in all these fantasy creatures are the humans. Humans, well, if you give a scale, the typical human is around 5'8", 5'9". That's the average. You go some places and it might be a little bit shorter, and you go other places that might be a little bit taller. And once you hit 7, 8 foot, that's close to being a giant. Close to being a giant. Very tall. So if you want to say these are human, per se, you're going to have to explain that. And that's what these critiques are for. Is because when we publish or try to present it to somebody that, then, that's a when you publish a book, it's really hard to take backsies, right? So, and that's what feedback is really important, and it's hard to get feedback, and that's what I'm here for. Is 7 to 8 feet is huge. So it would saying these are human. You're gonna have to modify your lore a little bit, or explain why these guys are basically giants. Now we got the Kobold Dragons. Kobolds are little tiny. 3 feet. This one's 3 feet tall. Pretty cool. And they're living in a kind of a harsh desert, and in the ravines. And it seems like that would make sense. They got to be small, hardy, and from the lore, it feels they may not be the greatest at armor, and it would make sense why they're being taken advantage of by the Dragonauts. But if they did want to mount an attack, against the Dracodons, if they did want to have a rebellion, it would, you could have them as a using some sort of poison. That's what I would use. But they're also very powerful in magic. The magic is a factor here. Very well known for magic. So yeah, so it's kind of hard for me to comment on these. It just makes sense. They're small. They're hardy. They can survive in the deserts. It's very consistent. All right. So next fantasy creature review is the Mattis. It is a very lanky, like dragon. It kind of reminds me of like an Asian type of dragon. And they live high up in the mountains, really high up in the mountains. According to the lore, the way it was explained to me is that these guys live higher than the Dragonons can fly. That's the big 14-foot winged creatures. The air is too thin, and so they are, avoiding them in the rocks. But they are very nimble. It appears to be very nimble. And again, I'm seeing a lamellar-like armor, which is neat. These guys don't have a helmet, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing, and I'll tell you why. This is like where, history and fantasy kind of part ways, if you will. I had a friend who was telling me a hunting story, and it was in the dark, and he saw this huge set of moose antlers. So he quietly walked inside, got his rifle, and he shot the moose. Right dead center in the head with his rifle. The moose hit the ground. He's like, oh, wonderful, he has a moose. He went to go back inside to get his wife. When they came back outside, the moose was gone. Antlers, heads with antlers are typically skulls, or the front skull, especially with a creature with antlers, like a moose, is naturally very protective. May not need a helmet. He may not need a helmet. He may have this really hard head, really thick scales at that point, and he only needs some lamellar armor to cover his vitals. Perfectly acceptable. I also would suggest possibly a shield, a round shield. More specifically, this specific creature seems to be very nimble, and a round shield would offer a lot of protection and maneuverability, which would seem to be very important. Mattis talks about if your sword is your primary weapon, typically that will also come with a shield. But then again, armor levels, if this creature is so naturally armored, maybe a shield's kind of redundant, and all he needs is a sword. So overall impression, very cool. Thank you, Chris, for sending these. If anybody else wants to have their creatures reviewed, or if they want a something like maybe an illustration of their drawing to be created, that'd be a fun project, and no charge at all, nothing like that. Creature design. The only thing I have for you, Chris, is humans. If they are supposed to be 7 to 8 feet, you're going to have to clarify a lot on why they are, because that's typically not normal. And 5'8", 5 feet and 8 inches, 5'9", 6 foot. That's about average. Some it could be a little bit taller in some places. It could be a little bit shorter in little places. But when we're talking about 7 foot, 8 foot, that's you're almost a giant. Almost a giant. Close to a giant. Pretty much a giant. That's not normal. I had a friend in one of his writings he thought was funny was he was making a joke, and he was talking about these cups, these elf-like cups, and I did not get it. I did not get it because when he said elf-like, he meant tiny little gnomes or tiny little Keebler elves, those type of elves. But I was thinking Tolkien elves, so I'm thinking tall and really tall and pointy ears, and I did not get the part of the joke that these cups were supposed to be super tiny. And so I missed the punchline altogether, and he was wondering, well, didn't you like it? I was like, I didn't not like it. I mean, I just didn't get it. And it's just the same thing if you say dragons. Well, what is a dragon? What is a vampire? What is a fairy? And so if you say humans, people expect a certain thing. So that might be worth exploring. And it could just be a mistake too. I won't. If it's a mistake, I won't. There's no sense of. Yeah, then just forget everything I said. As that happens to, maybe I misread it. If I could give any advice, any other advice, you're putting population sizes in the margins, which is kind of neat. Typically, this is only something if they have computers. If this is not, this is more of a sci-fi thing. We're going to planet X, and the population of whatever jumping kangaroos is this many. Well, thank you, computer. If that's completely fine. But if you want to go, let's say, New York City, you can say the population is this many. But the biggest thing when you're writing is to describe what it's like in that city without giving numbers, without saying making the book sound like first, second, third, and fifth Leviticus. I mean, lore is cool, but that's part of the entertainment, if you will, to make it immersive, less textbook like. And I haven't read any of your writing, but but seeing how your mind works, I see you gonna overanalyze things, and I want you to keep going. And it's important to get the first draft, finish a draft, because this is really cool, but it's not gonna matter if you don't finish your first draft. There's lots of cool ideas, but if you don't finish, then it's just an idea. There's lots of water everywhere. But, water alone, if it's not purified, if it's not put on paper, you don't have a story. It's still an idea. Everyone has an idea. So I encourage you to keep writing. And there's lots of different ways of storytelling. And some of it's writing, some of it's animation, some of it's video, but it's going to start with writing, and you need a first draft, at least a first draft. Finish a first draft, and the story never ends. It will never end. You're trying to capture a moment in time and a couple of characters. And if you go more than 8 or 20, it's going to get hard. It's going to get hard. Not impossible, but the more characters you start adding on, the more complex it's going to be. And I'm talking about main characters. And so, but the biggest thing is you want immersion. The lore and the cool numbers and the engineering stuff is really neat. But the most important thing is not the facts or if it could be historically probable. The biggest thing for a writer is a good story. Is it emotionally gripping? That's, numbers don't matter. I mean, in some cases they do. But if you can describe that, then you're going to be onto something really fun, really special. Again, the most important thing is to finish a draft. Once you finish a draft, you can start editing the draft. But until you have a draft, there's nothing to add. There's nothing to take away. It's all, everything's up in the air. So I really want to encourage you. I myself had made similar creatures when I was younger, and I was embarrassed. I was like, I didn't want to share them, and I wish I knew how much of a thing it is now. Because when I look at Skyrim, just dating myself, I'm before Skyrim. Before, I had no idea that humanoid creatures were it was an acceptable thing. That was before I read Red Wall. That was before I seen the Dark Crystal. I was I even changed some characters that were dragon-like in my books in appearance, humanoid dragon-like, and I made them human because I thought, well, people wouldn't like that, and so I want to encourage you. You're not alone, and it's gonna be an adventure. I can't wait to see what you come up with. If you need a cover when you finish your book, let me know. I'd be happy to make it for you. But there's plenty of other better illustrators than me, but I am free, so it's hard to beat free. But sometimes it's worth finding someone that's really talented. And sometimes, yeah, it's going to be a great adventure. I wish you the best of luck, and yeah, bye for now.